Spring is here and the garden is alive. Welcome to the California garden in April 2019. We will begin with a garden tour. We will look at all the harvests we made. We have some things for you to do in your garden. And finally, we'll look at some cool gardening products. So let's begin with the garden tour, starting with the raised beds. We have our Anaheim chili peppers and the eggplants that we transplanted right here, and they're growing well now. And right next to that, we have our purple kohlrabi plants, which have also grown pretty large and will be ready for harvest very soon. And then we have our tomatoes. As you can see here, our tomatoes have grown very well. They've picked up quite well now that the weather is warming up. And these are indeterminate tomato varieties. And on the other side, we have some space where we will be planting some okra very soon. We are planning to plant a lot of okra this season, and I'm waiting for the plants to become a little larger before I transplant them. We have our onions on the other side. As you can see here, the onions have grown very well. And our potato plants. The Yukon Gold potatoes have grown very well. And in our containers, we have a few updates. We have cilantro that's growing very well in the spring season. We have our tomato plants. This is the container bush tomato plant. And we have our container Prince eggplant. This is another tomato, the bush variety. And we have some potatoes that are growing in this whiskey barrel container. And another tomato plant. Our avocado tree is in full bloom and will produce fruits very soon. Our mulberry tree has grown very well as well and is producing a lot of mulberries. And now let's look at the harvest we made this month, beginning with bananas. Our Rajapuri bananas were ready for harvest once again, and we harvested some more bananas that ripened on the tree. We have cabbages that we harvested. Cabbage is a cool season crop, and by spring we harvested all our cabbages. And as you can see here, beautiful looking cabbage. And as the weather warms up, the cabbage will not grow that well. So this is probably our last harvest now before we move on to the summer crops. Cilantro. Cilantro is a cool season crop, and by spring it's best to harvest most of your cilantro as it will start bolting very soon. And to harvest cilantro, all we do is we pick the leaves from the side, and for almost the whole month we were able to pick out the cilantro leaves, and fresh cilantro leaves are pretty amazing. It's also called coriander, but the coriander is actually the seed of the plant. The plant itself is the cilantro plant, which produces these fragrant leaves. And cilantro is one plant that will keep growing even though you keep harvesting the plant, you keep trimming the plant. It will keep growing leaves till they go to bolt, which is when the weather gets hot. Mint. Mint was one plant that grew back very well after we trimmed it during the fall and the winter season. And as you can see here, the mint leaves are pretty good now. Beautiful looking mint leaves, which you can harvest as and when you need from your plants. And remember that mint is an invasive plant, so we have planted this in a container and not in the ground. Mulberries. This was the second time the mulberry plant produced mulberries, and this time the mulberries were absolutely delicious. As you can see here, they are black in color when they are ripe, and they taste pretty amazing. They have a very unique taste. And we are just growing this mulberry plant in a container, and it's producing all these small mulberries, a lot of them. And although the mulberry fruit is small in size, it does produce a lot of fruits and they're very delicious. And now let's look at the things for you to do in your garden. You can start transplanting your summer vegetables like tomatoes. We transplanted them in the raised beds as well as chilies and eggplants. And if you have any container grown plants like tomatoes, it's a good time to transplant them. And we also started some okra seeds. Okra requires hot temperatures, so we will be transplanting them a little later. And it's also a good time to start fertilizing your fruit trees. This applies to fruit trees growing in containers as well as in the ground. And what I usually do is take an organic fruit tree fertilizer, add some fertilizer along the base, and then cover it with compost. And this seems to do a great job. Now you need to fertilize your fruit trees till they become quite big. And at this stage, if you fertilize them, they will produce very good fruits. Also remember to keep composting. During the growing season, your plants will need a lot of compost, a lot of nutrition to grow. So make sure that you keep composting. If you're using a traditional compost bin, that's fine. If you're using the tumbling composting bin that we showed you, make sure that you're using some kind of a composting technique. Even if you use a compost pile in your garden, that's perfectly fine. If you're using the tumbling composter, make sure that you tumble it a few times every week. And that will make sure that your compost gets produced really quick. And now let's look at some gardening products. Now we showed you this strawberry grow bag a few episodes earlier. And basically what this strawberry grow bag is that it lets you grow strawberries from the sides. And as you can see here, the strawberries have grown very well. And the best part about growing strawberries like this is that you can easily grow a lot of plants in a very small space. And also when you try to harvest it, it becomes so much easier to harvest the strawberries. Now since the strawberries are not really touching the ground, they are very clean. The slugs find it a little hard to climb up and then eat the strawberries, so they're free of slug or snail damage. And as you can see here, they're quite beautiful. At your local Costco, you will find a lot of containers which are very attractively priced. And they keep changing the design of the container every year. This time the containers are taller rather than wider. You have some organic soil which is also discounted. This organic select soil is for pots. It's a potting mix by Kellogg. And it's an organic product. And if you want to use soil for your raised beds, there is another product by Whitney Farms. And as you can see here, this is an organic planting soil. And it's actually quite cheap if you look at the price. We have the shake and feed fertilizer if you want to use a salt-based fertilizer. This also contains a lot of added organic material to condition your soil. Now note that it does contain salt, so it's not completely organic. But they have added some organic material to this product to make it more attractive. And now that you have the soil and the pots, you also have some tomato plants. Now Costco has these really big tomato plants. So if you did not sow your seeds, if you did not plant your tomato plants, this is a good way to jumpstart your growing season. These plants are pretty big and they will grow pretty quickly. They also have a lot of fruit trees, assorted fruit trees. And it's a little expensive, but if you like growing fruit trees, if you want to add some fruit trees to your garden, this is a good choice. There are also some shade-loving bulbs, some plants that you can put in containers. And then there are orchids, which are very nice too. So there we have it, folks. That was our episode on the California garden for the month of April. If you like this video, do give us a thumbs up. And if you have any comments, leave them in the comments box below. We'll see you again soon. Happy gardening.